my name is Kathy Merkel-Roddy, and this is Revealing the Healing. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, or should I say least favorite subjects, brain fog. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but that was one of the symptoms that I started to experience about 5 years ago when my health went off a cliff and my brain fog became almost unbearable. I couldn't formulate a cohesive sentence. My short-term memory was super compromised. Anything technical, if I had to read a website or follow directions, it was so anxiety inducing because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't focus, and it was kind of scary, It kind of had a little bit of a window into what it would be like to have Alzheimer's or dementia or one of those things. So it certainly was not my favorite thing to go through. And so I hope you're not going through it, but if you are, I'm glad you're here, because I'm going to talk about some reasons why it happens, and then also I'm going to talk about some things you can do about it. So, let's get started. This is Bogey. I don't know if you can see him on my lap, but he refuses to sit quietly on the sidelines. He's got to be right in the middle of the action. So anyway, there's many different components that go into causing brain fog. So I'm just going to kind of talk about each facet of it, and then at the end we'll talk about what to do about all of it. So one of the biggest culprits is the fact that we are often stuck in a fight or flight loop. So it's one of those situations where our brain gets caught in a loop many times due to many different causes. It could be the fact that you had experienced a traumatic event and you did not have proper glucose in your brain, so you're stuck in this kind of fight or flight situation. And when you're in that situation, you cannot access your prefrontal cortex of your brain. And so that's where all of our creative thinking and where our problem solving and the part of us that is needed to handle any sort of tricky situation to figure out. So when we cannot access that, we get stuck in the amygdala, and then that further fuels the fire of our fight or flight. I know it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, but I'm just going to call it fight or flight just to make things easier. I keep adding on new words to the end of that. So anyway, so when we cannot access our prefrontal cortex, we are in this other emotional loop, and then that sort of is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the loop feeds the anxiety. When we can't access the other parts of our brain and think clearly, then that adds even more adrenaline onto the situation, and often we get so worked into a tizzy that we further propel ourselves away from where we're trying to go in terms of thinking clearly. So this happens just because our nervous systems, I would say across the board in this country, in the world, our nervous systems are highly dysregulated at this moment in history. We have so many things coming at us with our phones, with all sorts of technology, with the fact that we are reachable at any given moment. Back in the olden days, it took weeks and weeks to get a letter from someone if they wanted to talk to you about something. Now all they do is shoot you a text message. So this happens, the bits of information coming at us, the bits of stimulus on a daily moment by moment basis is already very much for our nervous system to handle, and we're not used to it. And so that's one of the reasons that we get overstimulated and then kind of get into this situation where we can't calm down because we always continuously have the things coming at us. So one of the things that I want you guys to to start doing is just noticing that you are being adrenalized. Things are upsetting you. Things are just jostling you, just getting your attention. Even if it's not scary, when you hear that little notification on your phone go off, you can't help it. You get a little adrenaline rush. So these are the types of things that are adding to our staying in this fight or flight situation. So we need to start lessening that if we can, finding times of the day where we're unplugged or we're disconnected from stimulus. So what are ways we can do that? We can set up a meditation practice. So this helps us in so many ways to find time during the day to meditate and to disconnect from all of that external stimulus, because during meditation our nervous system has a chance to calm down, come into more of the parasympathetic nervous system, where that's where the healing happens. That's where then we can access the prefrontal cortex of our brain. So when we're in that parasympathetic versus the sympathetic nervous system, we have a chance to access all the parts of our brain instead of just the one. So meditation is an amazing tool that we can do. It also helps us take back our mind. So Joe Dispenza talks about the fact that sometimes our body gets so accustomed to being in a certain state that becomes homeostasis. That becomes the state that we're used to being in. And when that happens, then the body just starts signaling the mind. And so oftentimes our mind isn't being controlled by our mind anymore. Our body is now in control of our mind, of our thoughts, of the way our brain is functioning. So it's up to us not only just to regulate the nervous system by meditating or doing some breath work. You can just do something simple like some box breaths. You can do some things like nature therapy. You can go outside and commune with nature. Just take a walk outside, or go sit under a tree, or sit and watch the birds, however you like to do. Putting your bare feet on the ground, on the grass, helps just automatically kick our nervous system down, so that then we can get into a better frame of mind to access our thoughts and our brain capacity to figure stuff out and to think clearly. So those are just some of the little tricks and tools you can do. Tapping. I don't know if you're familiar with emotional freedom technique. So you just tap different meridian points on your body, and that also kind of works around your nervous system that probably is stuck in a fear loop. So all of these things are so helpful to begin to bring our emotional state, our mental state, all of it down to a level of calm, so that we can then access our thoughts. So again, and speaking of thoughts, that's another big component in all of this, because we get caught in a fear loop. We're caught in this fight or flight thing that's happening, and oftentimes our thoughts are going to match our emotional state. So if we're in a fearful state, then our thoughts are going to serve up all of the thoughts that kind of coincide with that state. So when you feel a negative thought coming, or you think a negative thought coming on, you have to catch it and begin to rewire your brain and say, okay, you can analyze it. You can say, is this thought really making sense to me right now? Is it true? Is it valid? Because a lot of times the irrational thoughts that we're experiencing make no sense. They're not even from us. There might be from some other person's opinion, or something that they said to you previously, or just, I don't know. You can trust me. I know this from experience because I have lived it. So you can find fearful thoughts watching TV. You can find fearful thoughts, driving down the street. I mean, there's so many triggers that can happen at any given moment, and we can turn them into a negative thought loop. No problem. I'm an expert at doing that. So, but also I'm getting to be an expert about undoing that too, and that's where the healing happens, and that's where we start to be able to access our brain function and our normal way of processing information. So, medical medium talks about another aspect of that brain function being impaired. So he talks about the fact that during a traumatic event, we often experience a little bit of brain damage during the time where the trauma is happening. You're upset during that period of time, the brain overheats, and it actually begins to burn out neurons and neurotransmitters during that horrible event. So you get scorched basically in your brain by the electricity that is occurring at such rapid fire in such a heated kind of state. So oftentimes that also continues to keep us in that loop of our fear, and we get stuck in this constant like OCD circle where we can't stop thinking about these negative things. So we have to then begin to also repair the parts of the brain that got damaged. And so we can use a lot of nutritional tools to help us. We can help rebuild the nerves by feeding the body all sorts of great stuff that's going to help the nerves rebuild. So things like celery juice, things like leafy greens, things like, all of the fruits are so high in energy and detoxification abilities. So all of those types of things help our brain come back online, basically the way we normally would think and be able to process information. So another impediment besides the damaged nerves are also pathogens in our body. So there's a lot of pathogens in our body you may or may not even be aware of. Once we have a virus like Epstein Barr, shingles, we always have a little bit of a colony of that virus in our body from that day forward. And then what can happen is when the immune system gets depressed for some reason, or you're just run down, you're stressed, again, all of this is depressing the immune system. When all of this occurs, then the pathogens also inflame the nerves that are taking part in the thought process. So, and it's not only just the pathogens, but also their viral casings as they die, and then their excrement, which is, kind of gross. But, all of that stuff, all biological entities have a waste product as well. And so the waste product that is associated with the viruses that cause this to happen are toxic to the nerves and toxic to the ability to actually keep a stable line of electricity going down a certain pathway. And there's even another impediment, which are also the metals that are in our brain in addition. So the metals can get in there, and actually little teeny tiny particles can just sit on a neuron or just be in the middle of a pathway that deflects the electrical signal to a different place. So when we're trying to concentrate, we're trying to think of all these things or remember things, sometimes it's a physical thing that's happening where the electricity is hitting a deflector and bink and getting shot in a different direction. So no wonder we're feeling scattered and we can't focus. So all of those things, the pathogens, their casings, the nerve damage, and the metals all have a part in this. So for the metals, there's a fantastic smoothie you can drink called the Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie, and Medical Medium is the one who came up with that. It has some key ingredients. Wild blueberries are one, bananas, oranges, cilantro. Cilantro is a big one that helps to get the metals out of the body. Spirulina, Atlantic dulse, and barley grass juice powder. And so all of those ingredients together help the metals get extracted from the body, so that at least that aspect of the obstruction of the neural pathways is getting eliminated or reduced. And in addition, the pathogens will not be able to feast on those heavy metals and ingest them and then make them even more toxic towards us. So their excrement, sorry about that, I'm gonna have to sit up and get some water. Hold on. So as you can see, we have all of these different factors. We have the pathogens, we have the metals, we have the nerve damage that is in the brain tissue that got damaged from the trauma. So then we have to use all of the tools. We have to maybe create a diet that is free from the foods that feed the pathogens. The foods that feed those pathogens are eggs, dairy, gluten, corn, soy, canola oil, and pork. And so we want to begin to eliminate those things. We want to bring in things like celery juice, because celery juice helps loosen the metals. Celery juice gives us tons of minerals to help us rebuild those neurons and those neurotransmitters in our brain so they begin working properly again. Leafy greens are similar to that too. As many leafy greens as you can eat every day. Amazing. Lots of fruit, lots of other veggies, some potatoes, potatoes are very grounding, so they help our nervous system calm down. There's a special romaine lettuce is actually very good for helping repair the nerves and calm the nerves. So I highly recommend, as much romaine lettuce as you can have. There's all sorts of thing that happens with the fruits that we eat help to restore the energy and the electricity in our brain too, because of the high energy nature of the fruit. So that, in addition to monitoring our thoughts and keeping our emotions in check and learning to regulate our nervous system, overriding the nervous system when it gets a little agitated, we need to take it down and notice and stop living in this adrenalized state. So another thing I want to mention, that coffee and alcohol are also going to make brain fog worse. So coffee is horrible for your adrenals. The adrenals are the ones then misfiring and keeping us in a fight or flight situation often. So we want to heal those adrenals so that we can heal the brain fog as well. And of course, we all know that alcohol is not great for brain cells. So we want to avoid both of those foods as well as we get a hold of our viral load, as we begin to detox these other unwanted things out of our bodies, and as we're just calming ourselves down. Artificially calming us down with alcohol is actually impeding our own natural ability to do that. So when we repeatedly use alcohol as a calming mechanism, and I've been there, I've done this. I was on a several year binge of drinking pretty much every day. So I'm not preaching anything that I have not experienced. But when we're using artificial means to calm down instead of learning to regulate our nervous system from inside, we're doing ourselves a dysfunction and ultimately adding to our brain fog and a lot of other health problems at the same time. So anyway, I hope you guys found this interesting. It's very fascinating to me because, the body's all related. So you'll hear me talk about different subjects, and a lot of it has a lot of crossover into other subjects because it's all basically related. So I'll put a link to a couple things, a blog that I did about PTSD and anxiety, and then also I have a YouTube video about that too, and I'll put those links below. And thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys got something good out of this. And let's get rid of that brain fog, man. We gotta start thinking clearly. And I'm here to tell you mine is way better. Like, I have brain fog every once in a while now when I get fatigued, or when I'm not monitoring my own stress level or adrenals. I can feel it spinning out of control, and then my brain fog kicks in. So I'm not preaching anything that I'm not trying to practice for myself too. All these tools that I'm telling you about, I've used myself and continue to do. So anyway, I love you guys. I'm so glad you came to visit me, and I look forward to hanging out with you next time. All right?